Welcome to Eco Week 2024. I think some of you guys have been here before, but welcome to today's session on Clean Coasts. And I am Antonia, and I'm going to be your host for today. And I work with the Young Environmentalist Awards team here, so I am the project officer. So just a bit about ECO-UNESCO. We were founded in 1986 by a group of young people, and our aim is to empower young people who are involved with us to help protect the environment. ECO-UNESCO is proud to be one of UNESCO's affiliated clubs and a Sustainable Development Goals ambassador. 1 second. Perfect. So today's session is going to be kicking off with Liane. She is a Clean Coasts Biodiversity Officer from Taisce, and this is all linking in with SDG 14. So that is all to do with life below water. So you guys can see all of the SDGs there now in the meantime. So this is to link with that one, but it might link with others. We probably won't come across it today. So Liane is going to dive into the importance of our coastal environment and explore how we can work together as communities to embrace and champion local diversity. Before I pass it over to Diane, so anyone in the chat, if you guys could let me know where you're calling in from, where you're tuning in from, and how many of you guys are in the room, that'd be great. And as I said, in the chat, feel free to ask questions and I can send them to Liane, or we can talk about it at the end. Okay, perfect. So Liane, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for coming and for listening to today's session. I am just going to share my screen. So, we all good?
Yep, perfect.
Yeah, perfect. All right, so I am Liane Costello. I am with Clean Coasts, and I'm the Biodiversity Officer with Clean Coasts. I'll be talking to you today a little bit about our marine environment, our coastal environment, why it's important that we protect these areas, and then a bit about the work that Clean Coast volunteers are doing around the country. So what is Clean Coasts? Our first question here. If in the chat box, if people could maybe throw in if they've heard of Clean Coast before, if they've ever done a beach cleanup, or even if they live anywhere close to the sea or beside a river. So if you've done a beach clean, if you've heard of Clean Coasts, or if you live by the sea or close to a river, if we could throw that into the chat box would be great.
Cool, we've some loading, so we'll wait and see.
Nice. I like to see it. Interaction straight away.
Yeah, perfect. And some people are calling from Northern Ireland and Kerry.
Sweet. Welcome, guys. The big waves. I love it. Yes. To all live by the sea. We've done cleans and have heard of Clean Coast. Amazing. We did a marina cleanup, amazing, live by the coast, and some of us have done beach cleans before, hoping to do one again this year. So I'm talking to the right group of people, and maybe some of this stuff you've heard before. So please excuse me if it's repetitive, but hopefully we'll get a bit more information and maybe get you excited for the next cleanup, or if you haven't done one before, maybe encourage you to get out and do one. So back to the slides. What is Clean Coasts? So our volunteers run hundreds of cleanups every year. And when we talk about our volunteers, how many people are we talking about? And this is from I suppose, South of Ireland, Republic of Ireland national programme. So all around the coast of Ireland. If you see our lovely diagram here, which we're all very proud of, is we have 2,000 registered Clean Coast groups. And as you can see, it's pretty full all around the coast of Ireland. So these are people in their local community who have decided to take guardianship of their local area to do a beach clean. Maybe a lot of the time it starts off with a beach clean and then it can evolve into further actions to try and preserve coastal areas and also that marine environment, which we will go into a little bit further on. So I spoke about They do not only beach cleans, so they, I suppose, all these actions is trying to protect their local nature, the coastal and marine area. And a lot of that will start as a coastal cleanup. Now, as I'm doing my coastal cleanup, one of the really cool things is that it can slow me down. I can start to notice things in my natural environment that maybe I haven't noticed before. Perhaps it's maybe I'm noticing a change in the sand dunes, or maybe there's a species that's there that wasn't there before. And we start to notice these things, and we start to take maybe every time we go out, we see if there was something different that has changed, and it can then lead to doing further nature action. So not only looking at cleanups, which are of themselves a perfectly amazing action to be doing if that's the only thing you're doing, but also we have groups looking at nature restoration, community education, and then also wildlife monitoring, and through a variety of different citizen science projects that we can go into at the end of these slides. So yeah, so I suppose you guys have mentioned that you've done your coastal cleanup, and maybe even taking one of these next steps is a possibility for you, or it's something that you can see within your community and that's already happening. And it will be cool to hear about some of those at the end. When we have time for questions, if you have any projects you want to mention, I would absolutely love to hear them. From a Clean Coast point of view, so I suppose the brand, the organization itself, we have a number of initiatives as well beyond the amazing work that our volunteers do. And this is just, well, it's most of the ones that we're doing at the moment. There's other ones that can kind of come in and out. And we have road shows every year where our officers travel around the country to meet up with groups and hear what issues they might be having. Perhaps they might organize a screening of a movie, maybe a restoration event, a talk, a nature walk and talk, whatever it is. Our officers organise that once a year. We also have just had our big beach clean event, so that's our one citizen science project. It happened over the weekend, and we had one of our largest turnouts from that event, which was amazing. I think it was over 600 groups were registered for that event over the weekend. We have our Ocean Hero Awards, which happens every year, where we celebrate our community heroes. So the ones that are going above and beyond each year, we try to celebrate them. We get all together and we have a lovely time, or a day out in Dublin generally, where we get to celebrate all of the great work that people have been doing. We have a Love Your Coast photography competition. We celebrate World Ocean Day. We run corporate volunteering. We have campaigns such as the 2-minute beach clean, think before you flush, think before you pour, and break up with plastics that we run throughout the year. And then we also are able, each year, we're lucky enough to be able to offer grants, to award grants to our community groups, where each year we award in and around 30 grand. It is going up every year, but yeah, groups can apply for this and they get about €500 for their application, which is brilliant because we get to support the work that they're doing. Now, that's, I suppose, the stuff that we do. A small portion of it. We'll go a little bit into this further as we talk about actions that we can do to help the marine environment and perhaps slow the tide of marine litter entering that. But first, we need to work out why we want to protect the marine environment, and see, I suppose, the importance of it. All right. So we've got this lovely jewel anemone. And this is actually a picture from one of our Love Your Coast entrants a couple of years back, an amazing underwater photograph. And I suppose this jewel anemone is a good example of the biodiversity that we see within our oceans, and I think diversity being a huge part of that. Just the range of species that we see in our oceans is pretty mind-blowing. When it comes to Ireland and our marine environment and what we're looking, I suppose, what we have responsibility from a legal standpoint to protect, would surprise us, I think. So we have an ocean territory, Ireland has, and I would love if people could maybe have a guess how many times larger is our ocean territory comparative to our land. So if you imagine the lovely teddy bear shape of Ireland, how many of those islands will fit into our ocean territory space? So this might be something that you know already, or you could just have a guess. So is it 2 times larger? Is it 20 times larger? 100 times larger? If anybody could throw into the chat box what they might think the answer could be. If not, no worries, but if anybody wants to give it a go. Here we go, we got some typing. Happy days. And perhaps if you could say what school you're from in the message as well, I'd love to give a shout out to the closest answer. Okay, we've got Linda in for 7, Art School LaSalle for 5 times, very good. Victoria Maloney 10 times. Linda's coming in again. 15 for Kay Dorman. Excellent. Well, guys, I'll stop you right there because Victoria, ding, 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 nailed it straight on the head. Perhaps you've heard this already. Linda, thank you so much for your Education Centre in Castlebar. Very close with your 7, really good. But yeah, 10 times larger. So I'll just show you this on the map. It's quite cool to see. So the real map of Ireland we see extends way over this continental shelf. So out into the North Atlantic and this huge space of marine territory. It is one of the largest marine territories in Europe. So even though we're only this wee little country, I suppose we think maybe of ourselves, we actually, when you think about it, maybe don't always just think about a country based off the land. We really have quite a lot of space there. And with that space comes a lot of responsibilities, and it is an area that we need to be ensuring that we're protecting as much as possible. Okay. So within this marine environment, so when I speak of a marine environment, it's basically we're looking at saltwater areas. So any water that tastes a bit salty, that's what we're talking about, our marine environment. All right. Generally, obviously, it's out into the Atlantic, into the oceans, into the seas. But sometimes there will be transitional areas, so areas where you change from a freshwater zone into so you have your river feeding into the sea, and you will get a transition between saltwater and that fresh water, and we do consider these marine zones. Just to run through these areas and put a picture on them, because I think it's a bit easier to imagine them than me just waffling on about them. We have our coastal waters, so those waters that are quite close to land. We've got this lovely seal popping up its head in these waters. The coastal waters, high areas of growth, productivity. So when I say productivity, I mean there's lots of food available, there's lots of light available for the marine plants to grow, and lots of nutrients as well for things to grow. So we get a lot of species within these areas and that rely on them, and very important. There are also areas, our coastal waters can be influenced quite a lot by, let's say, well, I think probably the biggest ones that what I'm going to talk about today, it can be your litter, it can be pollution. And so that can be pollution from a point of view of bits of things that we've dropped or that have been accidentally dropped or deliberately dropped on the ground and maybe making its way to the sea. But also we can talk about maybe chemicals that might mistakenly get released into the natural environment, and also runoff from our land as well. So sometimes our land does not hold the nicest things in it, and when it's released with like heavy rain or storms, it can cause some issues in those coastal waters. We then have our intertidal zones. And we've got a lovely curlew here munching on lugworms. So you can see those little bumps in the sand is where we have a lot of worms living. This intertidal zone is between your low tide mark and then your high tide mark. And within that area, you have a bunch of species that are really good at getting covered with salt water. And then when the salt water goes away, they're able to either shut themselves up really tight like a muscle, or if you think about like a limpet pulling itself onto into a rock, and then it can store that moisture and avoid itself from drying out. Because it is a marine species within this zone, it does rely on that saltwater environment. So it's not great at being, it's not a land species. It does need that water. So it does need to protect itself. And then you might have certain seaweeds. You have your bladder wrack, your channel wrack within the intertidal zone that is very good at holding on to moisture, but also it could be dried out a huge amount. So you might sometimes be walking along the intertidal zone between the low tide and high tide mark, crunching on some seaweed and that is dried out because it's very hot. Once that is covered by water again, it will suck it all back in and come back into its normal seaweed shape and continue to thrive in that area. So it's very adapted to living between both land and sea. We have rock pools. This is I was taking a video of a sea hare, which is basically just like a little sea slug. You can have a little checkup of it later. I had my GoPro in as it was munching some algae. So I found this in a rock pool down off Phoenix in Kerry. We then have also our estuary zones. So again, where our rivers meet the sea, quite often we can have a mix of salty, fresh water there. They can also be tidal. So again, as they go out, they can release lots of lovely things for our gulls to eat on, or a variety of birds and species will munch on the food when the tide is out. And then again, when the tide comes back in, it provides life for a lot of the species that live there. Moving away from our coast, a little bit further, we have our open ocean. So that's really all of the rest when we move away from the coast. And you have to think about the open ocean. We have things living under the water, but we also have birds and species living above the water. In Ireland, we have 24 species of birds that rely completely on the marine environment for their food. Well, not completely, but for the most part, they will come back to land to breed. Species like our puffins would be highly pelagic or rely highly on the open ocean, only coming back to land to breed in the summer season. We then have our water column. So I suppose we have under the water, but within under the water, we have a variety of zones. So in our top zone, the first 200 meters, we get a lot of our life, a lot of light. Things can survive very well. And as we move down throughout the zones, we start to lose light, and the different species the species that live there will change in variety as you move away from those higher zones, all the way down to species even living at the deepest part of the ocean, which is in the Mariana Trench in the Pacific Ocean, which goes all the way down 11 kilometers, which is the deepest known part of the ocean. Quickly going through, we have reefs. So I suppose our idea of tropical coral reefs. We have also got cold water reefs in Ireland, cold water coral reefs. Reefs can also be seaweeds, or we have mussel beds, oyster beds, and then we also have seagrass as well. All really important areas for productivity. So again, for food, for resources, for protection. Perhaps you might have a younger species living in the seagrass bed where they're protected and they can hide away from larger species that might be predators of them. And then finally, we get all the way to the bottom of the sea, and we have our seabed here. Now, this is a lovely picture of a tropical seabed, but of course, those seabeds will change how close they are to the surface, what location they are. Are they closer to the equator? Do we have a warmer, temperate climate, or are we going towards the Arctic? And guys, I'm super flying through these as well. These zones, you could spend a lot of time on each of them, but just to give you a small example of the variety of habitats that we need to protect within the marine environment. And each of these needs, I suppose, different considerations. The species that live in them also rely on different feeding techniques and survival techniques, whatever it is. So yeah, we can't just really think as the sea is just the sea. There is a variety of aspects to it. So if we first look to the picture on the right, we have our ego approach to nature, where it's us as humans being the most important thing and looking down at the rest. And I suppose thinking that can solve everything and can sort everything and we've got all the answers. And I would hope that sounds to all of us as a not great approach towards a planet that has existed well before we have kind of got to this stage and has done perfectly well without us. It has thrived, and that we have to understand we are part of that mechanism. And those natural processes as opposed to being over them. So for the rest of the day, I hope that we look at ourselves as this eco approach where you can see this more circular planetary shape and humans just one aspect of that as opposed to us being on top of everything. So I'm going to go through a couple of things where I'm basically saying why the marine system is important to us as humans, but I don't want you to think of it as being, I suppose, us being on top of it. I want you to think about it as being how much we rely on this planet and this ocean that supports so much of us. And I suppose when I say this planet, 71% of this planet is covered by our marine environment. So it's a huge amount. So, we think as the land maybe being the most important part of it, but if you talk about just sheer mass, the sea our seas are a large part of our planet. It supports life. It is essential for food, resources, and raw materials, perhaps for building, for creating products. Quite recently, people have started to make plastic out of seaweeds. For food, I suppose that's for food. For us, billions of people rely on fish is their main source of protein. And so maybe it's not the most important source for us here, but in other places around the world, it is the most important source of protein. It regulates our climate. So it's amazing it's soaking up heat. It's amazing it's soaking up greenhouse gases, so carbon and methane. So it's amazing work to try and protect us from the, I suppose, the damage of climate change. It protects us against storms. I know it can create storms. It can be a big problem for causing those issues, but it definitely can. A lot of the reefs and the marine habitats that we have act as a protection against storms. And billions of people rely on our oceans and seas for their livelihood. So I hope I've convinced you it's a relatively important one to protect. We'll go through this quite quickly because I want to make sure we get through everything today. But we'll just take maybe a minute just in the chat box. If you could list all the marine plants and animals that you know. So just call them out in the classroom, and if your teacher could type as quickly as possible. I suppose maybe we suppose all, if you feel like you're going over maybe 20, we might stop it there. But if you can give me a fair list, would be great just to hear your knowledge. That's it, presentation, Tralee, and I can see the classroom as well in deep thought. Fish, salmon, whales, seal, fish, frog, octopus, shark, whale, dolphin, penguin, jellyfish, barnacle, plankton, anemones, all sea mammals, shrimp, crabs, sea slugs. Awesome. Brilliant. Sharks, coral, excellent. Nice, perfect. Really great. And I suppose one of the things to think about with these is we've named a lot of lovely animals there. A lot of it we've named groups of animals. So just for a few of the examples that you came up with there, I suppose if we think of something like seagulls, right? I suppose there's kind of a very general term for within Ireland anyway. We have 7 different species of gulls. So I challenge you, next time you're out and you see a gull in the sky, perhaps maybe you could see if you could work out if what species it is. Quite often it is the herring gull. I think is maybe the most common that we see, which is the very dinosaur, large beak, kind of scary, is going to eat your sandwich gull. But yeah, do have a look. We have 39 species of shark in Ireland, Irish waters. So the sharks are a species of elasmobranch. So they are sharks, skates, and rays are all elasmobranchs. We have 71, 72 species of those in our waters. We've about 24 species of cetaceans, so that's dolphins, harbour porpoise, and whales in our waters as well. So yeah, so starting to think about things as maybe not just we have whales, but we also have, when we talk about biodiversity and we talk about preserving biodiversity, it's preserving all of these animals and giving them their individual merit, right? So this is, I suppose, the amazing one. So approximately 240,000 marine species have been discovered and named, but it is estimated that there are 1 to 2 million species living in the ocean. So if you've any interest in, I suppose, biology or biodiversity or any of these things, what a cool career maybe to go into. The thought that you could potentially find a completely new species in the waters would just be absolutely amazing. So if it's something that you do enjoy, I would encourage you to go down this route, because there is so much more we need to do and there's so much more we need to learn, and we've only scraped the surface of our oceans, both, I suppose, literally and metaphorically as well. So waste, why I'm here to speak to you is the stuff that unfortunately shouldn't be in the ocean, but it is getting in. I have a couple of questions to run through. Marine litter is you're just going to throw a true or false into the chat box. Marine litter is a different word for fish poop. All right, marine litter is a different word for fish poop. True or false? A T or an F will do as well if you're done with typing. False, false, true. Very good. All right, I'll leave it with that. It is false. So false, any solid material which has been deliberately discarded or accidentally lost on shore or at sea. And it is normally to describe a product that has been created, man-made, and that we have produced and then lost at sea. Fish poop does a great job at breaking down in the sea and doesn't really cause us a huge amount of issues. Our own poop, it can cause issues, unfortunately, when it's released into the sea, but fish poop is all good. Okay, next question. Most litter comes from land. So most of the litter that we find in our seas comes from land. True or false? True, true. Yeah, very good. Excellent. Got it in one. True, the majority of litter comes from land. It's around 80 to 85% of it. The rest, I suppose, is coming from industries such as fishing and shipping, lost at sea. But most of the litter that we are finding in our oceans is from land. And then our last one, true or false, very little marine plastic, or very little marine litter is plastic. So very little marine litter is plastic. False, false, false. Yeah, perfect. Got it. So it is, the majority of litter is made of plastic. And this is because plastic is amazing at lasting for a very, 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 very long time. We are going to, I suppose, talk briefly about plastic and the litter problem. Plastic does a lot of good things. It is great for healthcare. It has helped solve issues of contamination and disease. It has expanded technology hugely. There are many benefits to the product that is plastic, but the single-use consumption of that is currently what we do in this world is not great, and it is unfortunately growing always. So we probably will see this problem grow more unless we look at some solutions. And solutions are continuously being looked at, but I suppose we just need to see what the problem is first. Now, the marine litter problem. This is a bit of a shocking one. 10 million tons of litter enters our global marine environments every year. So at the start, I said, maybe we can discuss, we'll discuss how we can maybe slow the tide of marine litter entering our oceans. This, I suppose, is the size of it. It's quite large. It is beyond one single person or one classroom to solve. And I don't want anyone coming away from this thinking that they have a responsibility to fix this problem. It is the responsibility of adults around the world who are in positions of power to make the correct legislation and the correct rules that we can stop this problem. But there is some nice actions that we can do alongside it that can help protect our own little patch of area. And going out for a cleanup is always a very nice activity to do. It's always very peaceful. But yeah, that we're going away from this understanding that there is actions being done to try and stop this. And it is not the necessarily the responsibility of just, as I said, one individual or one group to try and sort this alone. It will take collaboration, and it will take an effort of all of us coming together to try and fix this. Couple of places that we are finding our marine litter, or where it is coming from. So we discussed this idea that is coming from land. So to give you an idea where you might be finding it from our cities, we'll see items being dropped on the street. They can make their way into rivers, either straight being blown out there, or they can go through storm pipes, drains, and make their way out to the sea. We've also got industry waste being dropped at the beach. I spoke a little bit about that industry. So fishing and shipping, you can see there as well, being responsible for some litter. We also have mismanaged waste up at the top. So where we have waste that's been dumped perhaps, and it's not managed correctly, it can unfortunately escape its I suppose its last resting point and end its way back to the sea. We also have stuff that can end up washing down sinks, and lots of litter can come, unfortunately, from our toilets. So people flushing inappropriate things down the toilet. I spoke first quickly about the Think Before You Flush campaign. That is a campaign that we run all around sewage-related litter. So that's litter that people are flushing down their toilet. A lot of our volunteers find items that have been mistakenly flushed down the toilet on the beach. So just to give a shout out here, just to make sure everyone knows that it's only pee, poo, and paper that should be flushed down the toilet, and everything else always should go into the bin. Okay, that's a really nice one. That if we could stop doing that, we have 1 in 4 people in Ireland are still flushing inappropriate things down the toilet. So spread the word. And if it's a case that you've been making the mistake and flushing something wrong down the toilet, there's absolutely no shame in it. It's all about learning, and I suppose changing the behavior now will be great. So with that, and we talk about, I suppose, changing behavior, we can talk about a few actions. So actions against marine litter, but then also actions to learn more about marine and coastal environments, because it's essential for us to understand these environments so that as we grow older, as we develop within our communities, that we can really understand why we need to protect these areas, and maybe some of the threats that might be, because I suppose litter is not the only threat for a lot of these marine environments. We can maybe understand the other threats that could be affecting these areas as well. So our actions, here's some lovely pictures of people doing cleanups. A few of you have gotten out to do them already, and absolutely huge thank you from us for doing it. If you ever wanted to register as a Clean Coast group, you can go on to cleancoast.org and you can register today, and we'll get you some bibs and some kit as well. As I said, we have 2,000 registered volunteers, or 2,000 registered groups. It's actually 40,000 registered volunteers that we have around the coast of Ireland. So when we talk about, I suppose, mobilizing a lot of people, a lot of people really care about this. And you can see that by how many people have registered for Clean Coasts to become a volunteer and to do this. We have some groups who are very active that are out once a week. Some perhaps maybe only will be out once a year. But again, it's whatever level people can give back to their environment and their coast. Doing a litter pick as well, for me, is one of the most peaceful things. You walk very slowly in generally a very beautiful area, and you can really consider that environment. You have lovely chats with the people who you are with. And if you ever get bored and you run out of things to say, you can just talk about how dirty the beach is or how clean the beach is. It never gets too awkward. And so I really highly recommend for anyone who hasn't tried one yet. And again, please do get in touch with cleancoast.org if you are interested. Couple of last ones to run through, and then we'll do the questions. So I mentioned we did the big beach clean over the weekend. So these results are not including this most recent beach clean because we haven't been able to sort through the surveys yet. But you can see that since 2019, we've collected almost 9,000 kilograms of waste have been removed from the coast. It's just one weekend as well, to consider that. So it's not the work that the groups are doing all throughout the year. Yeah, again, almost 3,000 of that was removed in 2023 alone, and that number should be larger this year, I suspect, since we had much more people sign up. Our number one litter item always is cigarette butts, so over 22,000 of those found since 2019. It then goes food wrappers, 14,000, plastic pieces, 13,000, and then plastic bottles and caps. Now, this last one, hopefully, we'll start to see less of because of the return scheme, but we'll see. We'll see from the data this year. It might be very interesting to see how successful that scheme has been. The next thing we can look at, so I suppose that's the citizen science element, is then also changing norms, so changing the normal things that we do. I've put up this article from Killarney that within this town, coffee cups cause a huge amount of disposable coffee cups, is a huge amount of waste every year produced from these. And Killarney as a whole town decided they've had enough with them and they banned them completely. So it's only reusable coffee cups that can be used in Killarney now, and an amazing message for the rest of us, for not only like within our country, but also internationally as well. And then also really cool to see a bunch of people take control of their own fate when it comes to their plastic consumption, instead of waiting, I suppose, for legislation or for rules to change. I also mentioned the Break Up with Plastic campaign. So we run this every year in February in around Valentine's Day, encouraging people to change their choices from a single-use product towards a reusable product. So very simply, a plastic bottle for a reusable bottle, which I'm sure you're all doing at this stage anyway. But it's looking at different items where you could maybe make that change. Increasing our knowledge, I would encourage any teachers there maybe to take a picture of this screen. This is all of the amazing organizations out there doing work on the increasing information around our marine oceans, studies, research, education. We'll just turn off our mic there if you could. Thank you. And then, yeah. So, and we have, I suppose, like I've shouted out to ECO-UNESCO, we've got Green Schools, which is another program that's a part of Taisce, which is the organization I'm a part of. You can join your Green Schools committee as well, which would be an amazing action to do. The Explorers program by the Marine Institute as well is great for kids. Explore Your Shore. All of these have amazing information on our marine environment. And the last shout out I want to give is if anyone has an interest in writing and would like to do an action after this week, when you've heard so many amazing things, Young Reporters for the Environment, which also is run through Taisce, but it is an international competition, is open for registration at the moment. You can look up Young Reporters for the Environment to get more details, but the few details I have here is that in May, when the winners are announced, there will be a sharing prize fund of €1,500, and then not only there's a potential for you to travel to Europe with it as well and be in the international competition. And this year's topic is ecosystem restoration. And I suppose it's something that is quite close to our Clean Coasts heart. A lot of our groups work in it. And if there's anything that interests you and you would like to talk about, and this is definitely a place for putting your thoughts to paper or video and getting the word out there. Guys, that is me. Thank you so much for listening. I have absolutely whirlwind you through the marine environment and the few actions that our Clean Coast groups are doing, and the few actions that potentially you could get behind as well. If you have any questions, we can run through them now. But going forward, if there's anything that you would like to ask or talk about, my email is on the screen as well. And please do contact me directly. Would be very interested to speak to you, and also to register as a Clean Coast group would be great as well. It's cleancoast.org for that. I will stop sharing my screen and then we can do questions if anybody has any questions.
Amazing. That was so good, so informative. Yeah, if anyone does have questions, pop them into the chat, and I am just going to take over because we have 5 minutes left. So I'm just going to take over, and then while the questions come in, we can see what happens in the meantime. So fingers crossed. So 1 second here. A few people are leaving, so I know that classes or times might change. So yeah, we have a few hopefully coming in right now. But in the meantime, as Liane said, like just getting involved in any capacity is really, really good in any environmental organization that you can. So with ourselves, we do the free online Young Environmentalist Awards. So that's an eco action project. So basically, we just want you guys to raise awareness about a certain topic, and it's all linked with the SDGs. And then we have our workshops. They're either online or in person, so you can come out to your school or organization, or it can all be online. And then we have our youth groups. This is also free of charge to get involved with. So we have our climate justice program. So that's like advocating and taking that next step and talking to policymakers and TDs. And then we have our Youth for Sustainable Development as well. So that's a 12-week online course, or in person if you're based in Maynooth, Drogheda, Galway, or Dublin. And then one question came in. So how would you get into being a biodiversity officer, Liane?
So for me, I had a slightly obscure route. I suppose the most normal way is probably to do some sort of science around biology, zoology, ecology, that direction first. But actually, I came in, my first undergraduate was in film production and documentary production. So slightly peculiar, not maybe the most normal thing to go on and do marine biodiversity afterwards. But I worked in that for a number of years. I had a couple of different jobs, but I really wanted to do marine biodiversity, biology as a topic. So at a later stage in life, was able to go back and study marine biology in University College Cork. And from there, I got hired by Clean Coasts. I worked a little bit on environmental campaigns for them. And then just last year, they created the position of biodiversity officer. And so I suppose you can go in a very traditional route where you're science first, but I would, if maybe science you find difficult and you maybe need a bit more time to get used to studying or whatever it is, there's always the possibility to go back and do something later in life, which is really cool. So yeah, you can go science forward first, and also I suppose having something like a communications understanding or education would be really cool as well, because you get to share those skills, not only I suppose the scientific work.
Linda, I can pop that in for you. So if you just reach out to info@ECO-UNESCO and ask for basically YSD, so the Youth for Sustainable Development, and then we can pop all the information over to you as well. Just going on, Liane, with regards to like becoming anything involved in the environment or biodiversity, there's not always one set route. I think you can take several routes into it. Especially starting off younger, like you don't necessarily need to go straight into science. There's several different avenues that you can get involved with, and then see if that's what you want to do when you grow up, I guess. Because I think all of us probably have changed careers and different aspects, but I think just any step, any involvement is really, really good to start with.
Antonia, I just could do a shout out as well. I'm pretty sure
Yeah.
Presentation Tralee have gone out and done a couple of marram grass planting sessions with Clean Coast groups as well, and have done a couple of cleanups. So I definitely have heard of the school before. So just I see that they're online, just to say a big thank you to them as well. Already quite active within the Clean Coast group. And if I'm correct, the Think Before You Flush campaign has been out to them as well. So yeah, big thank you guys.
Good job. And then Keith, I think, was just asking about the young reporter competition. Can it be done in pairs? Do you know?
So Keith, I am not 100% sure. It's not the program that I run, but if you want to send me on an email, I kind of don't see that there will be a problem with it, but I can run it by the organizer. But yeah, and you can also get directly in touch through the young reporters. As if you check up the young reporters for the environment, they will have a contact as well through that. But probably the easiest thing, I'll get you a quick answer if you want to email me. It's just lcostello@EEU. I can put it in the chat. Oh yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
Thank you, Antonia.
No worries. Okay, perfect. So if you guys did have any more, you can get in contact with Liane or in contact with ourselves. So you can either do the info@ECO-UNESCO.ie or YEA@ECO-UNESCO.ie. And if you did have a little bit of time, it'd be great just to get a little bit of feedback. And it's great so that we can hopefully run these sessions a lot more and get you guys as involved as possible. So if you could tell us what you think, I've pinned it in the chat, but also just a quick, you might get a reminder email as well. And then for the rest of the week, well, today's Thursday. So for today and then tomorrow, we just have a few more sessions going on. So if you guys do want to sign up for additional ones, but I'm going to say a massive thank you to Liane. That was really, really informative. And I know it's quite a quick session, but I think it just gets you thinking about where you can start, even if you potentially don't live near the coast, that we can have an effect no matter where we live, really. So I think a massive thank you to you. And if anyone does have any further questions, let us know. In the meantime, I will say goodbye, and hopefully we'll see you guys all later on.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.